Hi everyone, it's Matthew here from Bead Spider, and I'm going to be showing you how to make this fantastic Karabo Preciosa bracelet. What I really like about these bracelets is that they're extremely easy to make. You can get really creative with your design ideas as well. They're great for either men or women, so they're unisex. You can do them as a single length bracelet like this one just here, or you can make them long so that they wrap around a few times. However you want to do it, it's entirely up to you, but I'm going to show you how to make them. So let's begin. So what we'll be using to make the bracelet today is some 1mm Smooth and Slinky Cord, a nice colour thread that matches your Smooth and Slinky, some colours of mini tile beads, 2-hole mini tiles, and some size 10 or 11 seed beads. These ones I've got are size 10 Preciosa seed beads. I've got a button, a beading needle, and a pair of scissors to use at the very end as well. So the first thing we need to do is measure how much Smooth and Slinky cord we're going to use. If you want to do a double length bracelet like this one, or a single length bracelet, you've got to measure out at the beginning how much Smooth and Slinky cord you'll use. Essentially, the way that you decide how much cord that you're going to be using is to measure out, fold it in half, like I have like this, and then measure along pretty much the entire length that you're going to want. So if it's going to wrap around your wrist once, it only needs be long enough for one wrist wrap plus an additional few inches, maybe 3 or 4 inches beyond that. Or if you're going to do a double length one, you would do the full length you need to do the double wrap, again, plus another 3 or 4 inches worth at the end. So when it's in half, it has to be the full length of your bracelet. I'm going to do a double length, so it needs to be roughly about, if I just show you by eyeballing, rather, you can measure if you prefer, but otherwise to eyeball it, it's about here, plus about this much more. So I'll just take my scissors and cut at this point just here. There we go. Now that I've measured my cord, I need to thread a button into the center just here. So measure out, find the middle of your cord, remember that point, and then at the opposite end, take your one end of your cord through one side of the button. Oops, there we go. And then back down through the other side, and just keep pulling until it's all the way into the center of your cord, like that, so that it's a nice even amount on both sides, like so. Perfect. Now we'll take some of our thread. This is what we use for weaving on our beads, stitching the beads onto our base, if you will. If we call this the base, this is to stitch the beads onto your base. So you need about maybe 4 meters of thread. It just kind of depends how long your bracelet is going to be, but if you've got 4 meters, you should be pretty safe for weaving back and forth the whole way without having to change threads. So I'll just pull myself out some now. Cut your thread, ready to attach your needle on the end. A tip for when you're working with a thread as long as this is if you just make the tail of your thread coming out of the eye of the needle really long, it means that this section, which is the part we'll be working with, is much shorter and easier to manage. And then as you run out of this, you just shimmy your needle along little by little until eventually you use up all of your tail thread here. So it works out makes the whole process much easier for you if you get tangled with long threads. So I'll just pick up my very first bead here. This one, it's going to sit directly underneath the head of the button here, just behind our button, something like this. So we need to secure both the bead and also our thread to our base. So when you take your needle, you need to be going carefully through the edges, through the side, directly through your cord. You've got to try and get it nicely through the center. If you pinch the edges, you might damage your cord a bit, so you've got to be careful that you are indeed through the middle of that thread. Then once you've got your thread through it a little, you pick up your first bead, go through that hole, slide it into position, and then again, same on the opposite side, you need to carefully make sure you go through the center of the cord, just below the base of the button. So when you pull it through, it will lock your little piece nice and neatly there, and that's secured. So to tie your thread, to secure your thread, we're going to do some back stitches. So I'll leave a little tail on this end here, maybe about, you know, 3 inches or so, 3 or 4 inches, that's enough. And then I'll bring my needle back, and where it comes out of my thread just here, I'm going to stitch back near that same spot and through the hole of my bead again. Then across, through to the other thread. Again, trying to be careful that you make sure you're in the center of it, and pull that all the way through. If you continue pulling it back and forth, weave back and forth a few times, you'll find that it will eventually tighten and becomes very, very secure when you're working. So just pull it nice and tight like that, and you can see our thread becomes nice and secure. So I'll just weave back through the same hole once again, trying to go a little bit below where my other thread is, through the hole, and then again out onto the other side. I'll pull it all the way through once more, and we're pretty much secure now and ready to continue on adding more beads and finishing this bead off this hole here. So now you see that the bead sits, the next hole is just a little bit lower down. So all you need to do, and this is why we have a thread that color matches, so that it's practically invisible. You take your needle through this just a little bit further along where the hole of the bead is, through the bead, and then out through the next side of the thread, cord, sorry. Pull your thread all the way through once more, and that will secure the bottom hole of that little bead there. Now what we'll do is add some, this is the fun part, is deciding the design that you're going to do. So I might just lay out a few beads, play with my design, and work out exactly how I want my bracelet to look. I really like this part. It's where you get to be really creative with the order that you thread on your beads and create your design. So like for example with this one here, I've gone for quite a simple one where I've gone some seed beads, a tile, seed beads, tile, seed beads, tile, seed beads, and so on. But you can also do a lot more playing around. Like for example in this one here, it goes tile, seed, bead, tile, seed, seed, and then 3 tiles, or even in ones like this where you've got, you know, a mixture of popping in 2 sets of seeds every now and again if you want to. Others where you can even mix and match what different beads you use. Like this one, I've got some Aurora microcrystals in there. There's a lot of creativity and fun that you can do with choosing which beads and how you order them at this part. But now that I've got my little design choices, I'm gonna start adding them one by one. So now back here to where I was, I'm going to make sure my thread is nice and tight. It's important to have a good tension, otherwise your work can get a bit wibbly wobbly as it goes a bit further down. But anyway, the first thing we do, I need to come outside here. So as you can see, my thread is coming out of this hole through the thread just here, and where I'm going to want to place my next bead is just here. So I need to just pierce through the edge of my cord here, take my thread through, pick up my first few beads, which are these ones just here, 3 little seed beads there, and then jump across and go through this side, again trying to be neat so that it'll sit nice and neatly to where next to this tile. So I'll just thread through there, and as I pull it through, it should all nice and neatly come together. One thing you do have to be careful, which you can see I've made the little mistake myself, so it's perfect time to show you, I guess. If you're not careful, because the thread is quite long, it can loop over the end of your little base just here, over the tail of your base, and you end up with your base caught inside the loop. So if you see this happen, just pull the base out from inside that loop, like so that it's back on the edge there, and we'll just pull it in so that it's nice and tight, and we haven't wrapped our thread around the edge accidentally, causing little loops or anything. So now that I've done that one, it's nice and tight. I'll take my thread, again working the opposite direction, but it's the same technique. You pierce through the outside edge, approximately where you want the whole of the bead to be. Pull it through a bit. Pick up your next bead, and then jump across and through the other side of your cord and pull it up nice and tight. Again, make sure you don't get your loop caught around your base, and pull it on nice and tight. Then just weave back again now. So because it's a 2-hole bead, it's already in position, so we just thread through the edge where the hole is, through the hole, outside, up through the other side, like so. Just got to be careful that you're through the middle of the thread there. There we go. There it is. And then pull it all the way tight, making sure it's nice and neat. So there we go. And then just firm it all up so that everything is nice and taut. And then just continue along threading your beads. The reason I've done 3 seed beads, by the way, is because the width of those 3 seed beads is pretty much exactly the height of your mini tile. If you only used 1 seed bead, you'd get kind of a zigzagging in and out effect, which can look really interesting if you want to do something like that. Again, it's just another design that you could try, is making it wider and thinner and wider and thinner. But I'm going the easy way and just keeping it all the same width. So just pop off my 3 beads. Make sure you go through the outside thread first. That's very important. You can't forget that step, like I almost did just then. Go through it. Then pick up your 3 seed beads and oops, get my thread out the way, through the opposite side of your cord. So you can see it's starting to come together, but I'll just continue on threading my beads all the way along until I get to pretty much about the end, and I'll show you how to continue on once you've done all of that. So I'm pretty much at the length that I need to be at now for my double wrap bracelet. Pretty much comes around my wrist twice. Nice now. And essentially what I need to do is finish it off with a little loop at the very end. So I'll just get it into position to be ready for those last few stitches. Essentially, I'll go through here and then through here. And what we need to do is taper it off here. So instead of using 3 seed beads, I'm just going to put 2. Just get that out of the way if I can. There we go. So through here, and there are my 2 beads just there. So you can see it's just that fraction more tapered down. What I'm going to do now is more or less stitch these 2 sides together. So it's nice and neat, kind of like that just there, which the process is quite easy. You just take your needle through both threads fairly close to where the bead is, with no beads in between. You can put 1 bead if you want to taper it even more slowly, but it's not entirely necessary. And then you just pull that tight and then back stitch through a few times. So just jump over across again, pull that nice and tight. See how that brings the 2 threads together? Let's do it a couple more times. 1 more this way, and 1 more back the other way. And now we're pretty much ready to make our loop on the end here. So we're just going to fold a little loop at the top here. Just take one of your ends and fold it to about the size it would need to be so that our little button end will fit through it. So this should do, maybe even a fraction smaller, but if it's a little too big, it's not a problem. If it's a little too small, you might have some trouble. So it's always better to err on the larger than the smaller side. So once I've got it more or less in position, I'll just stitch through it the way I've been stitching just before. So all through this thread, through that thread, and then through the bottom of the loop as well. And then just once more to lock it in place. There we go. So now that I've got my little loop just here, so I'll just wrap the base of this one underneath. I'll go over once and then over twice, like so. And then with my thread, the end, I'm going to go up through both of those loopholes. So just there, like that. If you keep it nice and loose while you're doing this at the beginning, it makes the whole process much easier. But then just bring it in nice and tight, little by little, edging it up until eventually, there we are. And now you can see you've got this neat little lug around the base of your loop. So to secure that, you can put a dab of glue in there if you want to. It's not entirely necessary, because what we'll do is we'll stitch it into position. So you can see the thread's just here. So we'll go through it a few times, just making sure we go through all the different angles of it, skewering it so essentially it can't come undone anymore. Just back and forth, however many times as you like. It's not too important. Just till it's feeling nice and secure. There we go. One more, I think, and that should do me. Just through here, just to make sure I'm going through the end of my loop. There we go. Here we are. So now I'll just take my scissors and I can cut these two bits of thread off, and this one too. So just try and get in here like so, nice and close to your knot. And then same with this one here. There we go. And finally, my little weaving thread. Pull that up. There we go. And now let's take a look and see what we think. There we go. Pretty neat, isn't it? It's quite nice. It's a good finish. Then I'll just check that it's working. This is the important part. Make sure it fits over. Very good. Perfect. So that will sit on nice and neatly and secure it when you're wearing it. So finally, all you have to do now to finish it off is you can either just take your needle, put your needle onto the end here, and thread a few times back and forth, tie a knot if you feel you need to, but just back stitch and stitch and stitch until eventually it feels nice and secure and strong, and then cut it off and your bracelet is finished.